Hello everybody, I hope you're having a wonderful day, and today I would like to share my final thoughts on the Sencut knives sachet. At least that's how I am going to be pronouncing it during this review. There are a couple different people that pronounce it different ways, and that's really not important. I first want to get into a couple size comparisons here so you guys can see more or less what it's going to be comparable to. So here we have the Civivi Knives Elementum. It is significantly larger than the Elementum in both handle and blade lengths. Here is the Demco 80 20.5. It is quite the same in handle length, but because this is a drop point versus the shark's foot, the blade is a little bit larger on the sachet. If I had the drop point version of the Demco, then they would have been pretty close to the same. Next, I have two Spydercos here. This is the Para 3, close to the same handle length, but it is significantly larger than the blade here. Here I have a PM2. The PM2 is just larger overall. And last but not least, I have two Benchmates over here. So this is the Osborne 940. I do have aftermarket scales on it, but they do not add any extra length. It is exactly the same handle and blade, which is nice. And then the bug out. So it is bigger than the bug out. It's just a little bit more in handle and significantly more in blade. So that'll be it for size comparisons there. This knife does come at $46.50. I did purchase my specific unit on Amazon, and it is actually the same price on Blade HQ. There are a couple different variants. There is this one, which is the satin blade, black micarta. There is a black wash with dark green micarta, a satin with natural JG10, and then there is another satin with brown micarta. So those are the variants that are available. Now Sencut, this is my first Sencut knife. This is my first experience with this brand, but not quite, because Sencut now is the budget brand of WE. And here I actually have the WE Subjugator, which I think is the closest model that WE has to offer that's quite similar to the Sencut sachet. But then there is Civivi here in the middle. So whether you guys know or you don't know, this is how it is. WE does extremely premium materials. Civivi is a little bit more middle ground, and Sencut is now the lower end. But the great thing about this huge company is that everything is built to the same quality of fit and finish, in my opinion. It is just my opinion, but there are a lot of things that I noticed about this Sencut knife that are exactly the same as Civivi. And at this point in time, Civivis are significantly more expensive. They're almost double, maybe 75% more than some Sencut knives. When I did get this model, the action was amazing, and then it went to shit really fast. I was having a lot of issues with button lock stick, and it was just really, really bad. But the way that I helped to mitigate that was just, I would release it from the detent, or what acts as a detent, and I would just flick the living crap out of it a couple times, and it wore in a spot to now where it is extremely smooth. It is locked up in all directions. It has zero any kind of play you could look for in a knife. It's just great. It really is. And this being a sub $50 knife with button lock, opening mechanism, closing mechanism, whatever we want to call it, and the WE Civivi Sencut build quality, this thing is an absolute winner. Now, the only downside here, in my opinion, is going to be the blade material. It is 9CR18 MOV. And while Sencut uses 9CR18 MOV and maybe some D2 in some other models, Civivi will use Nitro V, which is significantly more, just better. I think they have some 14C28N stuff, and then we uses 20CV. They do have stuff in M390, I believe, and also CPM S35VN. So really the only thing that you're missing out on is really just a high-end budget material here. But the design's definitely not lacking at all. And I'm actually going to be comparing this knife a lot to the WE Subjugator. Now the WE Subjugator, I have an unboxing, first impression, and final thoughts video on this. This is a $225 knife. This is a $50 knife. And I believe that the $50 knife is better than the more expensive one. Now hear me out. While I love super high edge retention blade material, I love titanium and all the cool crap that you can do to it. It's great and all, but the button lock function on this thing is just so freaking sweet now that it's broken in. It blows that Subjugator out of the water. It really does. If this was ever offered, so you know how WE has their WE Malice? If they made this with 20 CV and titanium scales, oh my God, I would throw my money at that so fast. I really would, because this thing is a little bit more hand feeling than the Subjugator. It's a little bit taller in, you know, most dimensions. The blade stock is quite the same. Opening methods are the same. It has thumb studs on both sides, and it has a flipper tab. One thing I did notice that is, well, actually, you know, it's the same on the flipper tabs, is that the jimping does go all the way around, and it's good quality jimping. It grabs the skin just fine, and it is very comfortable to use for sure. It's also safer to use than the Subjugator, because with the Subjugator, you have a frame lock. So technically your thumb does have to cross the path of the blade right before it collapses, right? Not that big of a deal to well-seasoned enthusiasts and, you know, other knife users alike, but the button lock, I believe, will be a way better gift knife for somebody who you want to get into the hobby, that maybe they're just used to just junk knives, and you want to get them something that's like, you want to know what a real knife feels like? This is what a real budget knife is supposed to feel like. Not something from CRKT, not something from Gerber, not something from Kershaw. This. I don't like those other brands, and if you've watched my other videos in the past, you know that I'm not the biggest fan of them. I've given them multiple chances in the past. They have a couple new things that look a little promising, but in the past, their build quality just has never come anywhere close to what Civivi was offering when they started with just like 3 models, right? They had like the Insight, the Praxis, and the Backlash, right? There was only like 3 models that Civivi had, and when they came out, they were like, boom, they freaking just destroyed the budget market. They were just the top dogs. You were getting the most amount of quality, fit and finish for the money, right? And at that point, it was like, does US build quality really matter? If budget is something that you're concerned about, does where a knife where a knife is made really matter? More often than not, not really. You just want a decent working knife that you know, are going to have confidence in, that it's not going to fall apart in basic use. Now, the only thing that I personally would tell a person, like let's say I was giving this to my brother-in-law, I would tell him, hey, this blade material, while it can get up to a really sweet edge, it'll dull really fast and it'll go to shit if you hit a staple or you are cutting something outside and you hit the concrete, right? As with most other blade material, this is susceptible to the same exact thing, right? So, but there are plenty of benefits to this. This is a $50 knife. Most people aren't going to cry about damaging a $50 knife. I wouldn't, feel any which kind of way besides pleasure of gifting this to someone, right? It's like, oh, look, here's this knife. It's great. It's not going to come down on your fingers and hurt you. It's actually very safe to open and operate. Just be mindful that this has bearings and that it is very, very fidgety for sure. There are multiple deployments and all. But, once you press that button, it's coming down. Keep your fingers out of the way and you'll be fine. That's really the only thing you really gotta think about. So I have full confidence in saying that this is and will be an amazing gift knife. Now, currently, Sencut does have 2 other models that are button locks. I'm very curious in those other models, and I will most likely be purchasing them. And I hope that they are just as good. In my opinion, this Sencut sachet is better than the Altus, Conspirator, and the Chevalier. While I loved all those other knives, the Chevalier, the Civivi Chevalier, had the best tension and action. The Conspirator was the smoothest, and the Altus was the snappiest. In my opinion, this is all of those things. The only downside is that all those other knives were in Nitro V or 14C28N. I'm pretty sure they were all 3 of them were in Nitro V. But you know what? This thing's pretty darn sweet. It came perfectly centered. I did have a little bit of issues with the action, as I mentioned before, and I just had to snap it down really hard. But that's really it. The ergonomics are great. This micarta is beautiful quality. Everything is machined. There's no weird fuzzies. There's no chippy looking parts. It's I was surprised and then I wasn't surprised when I purchased this knife because I knew it's being manufactured by the Civivi knife company. So there was a bar that needed to be met, and it did, in my opinion. The only thing that's lacking is the blade material. I would most definitely pay twice as much if this was in Nitro V, and that's what the Conspirator, the Altus, and the Chevalier were at. They were 80 or almost $80 knives. This is a $50 knife. I would pay double if this was in more substantial blade material. That's just my opinion. I love this, profile overall, as I love my Conspirator here. That Conspirator, Subjugator here. Sorry, there's all these different freaking names floating around in my head. But that's really it. So if you have this knife, you're definitely gonna love this one for sure. The only thing you're really missing out on is just materials. The build quality is quite the same. And I am more likely to carry this than the knife because I love fidgeting with my knives. I love the button lock. I love, the tension. I love the tiny bit of lock stick that it has now once it's broken in. And it's a wonderful knife to use. It really is. Let me know what you guys think about this model, if you currently own it or you are thinking about buying it. Maybe you have certain reservations about it. I would say just discard them. It's a $50 knife. Go for it. I believe you will be happy with it. Just be mindful that you're gonna have to maintain the blade a little bit more than something like Nitro V or 20CV. So with that being said and all, have a wonderful day, and I hope you enjoyed this review, and take care.